I'm Jerry Picardi, and welcome to Around the Cracker Barrel.
I'm Bruce Lane. We're here tonight with William O'Donnell, the Norfolk County Register of Deeds. He's been with us before. Welcome back, Bill.
Thanks,
have
Bruce. Jerry, thank you for having me.
We figured we'd have you in and see what you're up to there. There's always something going on up there in Dedham, right?
Right. Well, it's good to be in Avon, and Avon's one of the 28 communities that make up Norfolk County, and I'm the Register of Deeds, and so there's always something going on. And again, the registry deals with, probably an arm of government many people don't know about, but it deals with the biggest asset most of us have, our homes. Right. So it's always good to provide some information about our homes.
Real estate, yeah, exactly.
I'm sure over the years, but I was reading some of the literature that was sent to us recently, and some of the changes that have gone on, the deconverting that's gone on at the registry there,
right?
The records-wise and so forth.
Sure. Norfolk County was established in 1793. Governor John Hancock, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, signed a law establishing Norfolk County. So we have great history here in Norfolk County, and the records go back to 1793. And during my tenure, and again, the things I talk about, there's no I in team from playing sports. We have great staff and employees who have kind of embraced change. But one of the things was when you got there was so much paperwork. We were almost being paralyzed by paper. There were backlogs and things like that. And with the cornerstone of our modernization effort was bringing in a new document management system, a new computer system, and it's allowed us to do so many things incrementally. And it's taken some time, but if you went to Book 1, Page 1, the first document from 1793, you can view it on our website at www.norfolkdeeds.org.
I found it very interesting going through the literature that you've got information on John Quincy Adams, John F. Kennedy, and George Bush. George Bush Sr.
Right. Well, and again, Norfolk County has great history. It's known as the County of Presidents because 4 presidents were born here in Norfolk County. So a lot of people are coming by the Registry of Deeds, and certainly anyone from Avon, come on by. We're at 649 High Street in Dedham, right across from the Gold Dome Superior Court. But you can also, visit us on the website and look up the information. But a lot of people are not just doing it for real estate as real estate professionals and to see what's going on, but they're doing it for genealogical research or historical research because of all the information that's out there. And I like to think we're bringing the registry's records into people's homes and businesses. So, It's taken a while, but we're back to 1793, and we still have projects that are going forward where the indexes, we're working our way back on our indexes. And speaking of 1793, from 1793 to 1900, there are 861 books, and in those days they hand wrote the information. And when you view it, it's hard to read.
Right.
But one of the projects we're moving forward, and you can go online and look at some of it, is we're trying to transcribe those handwritten documents.
So it's typed.
So it's typed.
Oh,
again, very difficult. And I laugh because, the modernization effort in 1900, Register Burdekin started typing January 1st, 1900. And he started working his way back a little, typing some of the old documents, and he stopped. And I'm starting to realize why he did. It's a pretty tough project, tedious project, but we're getting there. And so that's, another part of the modernization initiatives that we're talking about. So, all that information is on, and all the plans. Some of your listeners might want to, look at the plans to their house, and it's all available. And if you check the registry website periodically, we do have class seminars. We just had one recently where people come into the registry at 4:30, and for the next hour and a half, we have a little class on how to do the research. And
show them how to do it from home then online.
Yes, we actually, there is written materials online that people can read and try to do it themselves as well, to do a little research.
On the deed of a property, Bill, any change, any legal change to property should be recorded on the deed as
yes, and it's if you're buying a house or selling a house, that's the cornerstone of the transaction, is having that deed recorded. And if the deed's not recorded, if I'm buying the property from you, Jerry, and I don't, as the buyer, take steps to record that deed, theoretically, you still own it. You could still borrow on it, and things like that. So, at the Registry of Deeds, the case law here in Massachusetts, everyone we're a race notice state, so everyone races to the registry to make sure those documents get recorded. And, we're doing it in a little different way. I always say that the mission of the Registry of Deeds is probably the same as it was in 1793. We're an arm of government that should be recording these documents efficiently, accurately, and keeping them in a secure place, and that these community land records should be accessible to the people that want to look them up. I think the mission or the delivery of the services has changed. Society is so much faster, so we've taken these advances in the computer and advances in technology and put it out there so people can look it up without the tedious way of going through books, and it's more instantaneous now. So I think we're delivering the service in a little different way. The mission's the same. You still got to make sure you do things right.
Now, you find that less people are coming to the registry now?
We still have a core group of, when you come to the registry, it's a beautiful building. It was built in 1903. They've been recording documents in Dedham since 1793 and in that building since 1903. But we still have a fair amount of lawyers and title examiners that set up shop in the registry to do the research. But a lot more people are taking advantage of the advances in technology. So they're taking the virtual trip to the registry. They're looking up the information and doing things like that. And now one of the new things that we've come up with, we were one of the first registries to do it, is electronic recording. So it's been authorized by the state legislature, and a lawyer, say in Avon or Bellingham, can do the closing there in their office. They can go online and look up to make sure there's no liens. And then they transmit the whole closing package to the Registry of Deeds, and we put it on record. So there probably are less people coming in, but there's still a fair amount of activity there.
Now, do they still have to, even though they're transmitted electronically, do they have to send you copies of the originals, or is that it, just the electronic?
They've been authorized by statute to do this electronically. Okay. At the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds, we were the first registry in the state to require an agreement to be signed where they are representing that these are original, based on originals. So in some of the states across the country, they didn't have what they call these submitter agreements, and I thought it was crucial to have it just to keep the integrity of the land recording system in check. That's a big thing, the integrity of the land recording system. So even though we have these advances, you still want to make sure things are done right.
And there was something else I found very interesting as I was reading through the material, Bill, was that there were some organizations, and it's done legally, that will offer to get you deeds or whatever for a fee. $60 or whatever, when a person can go to the registry and get a copy of a deed for $1 or $2.
That's correct, Jerry. When I used to be an assistant district attorney, and it's amazing what people do to take advantage of people. I saw it when I was an assistant district attorney, and you continue to see it. And you're right. We have written letters to the past attorney general, and we've just written a letter again to the new attorney general, pointing this out. The feedback that we've gotten is that, well, yeah, you're right. It's questionable, but it's still legal. But it's great to be brought up in a group, on this show, because any of the residents in Avon, if you need a certified copy of your deed, you can come by the Registry of Deeds, and most deeds are at most 2 pages. It would cost you $2. Right. Many times we have office hours, and that's the beauty of the computerization. We can now bring our records on the road, and we've had office hours in Avon and around the county, where if people need a certified copy at the office hours as a courtesy, we give it away free. But it's good to bring that up, because that group was charging $60 to get something that they would come to the registry and pay us $2. And with that group, at least you got a certified copy of your deed. Right. There's another group that's now out there, and they are sending people it looks like a government invoice. It looks like a real estate bill, and they're calling it a document processing fee, and it's $83. And they're really kind of targeting people who may have had a transaction at the registry. I've heard this from lawyers who said, I had a client come in and they thought I missed something, and they brought an $83 check for me to send in. I said, no, don't do it. It's part of this, what we call deed scam. Mm-hmm. And that group that's charging $83, they don't even certify the deed. They just give you a copy. They don't even get it certified. But
and people probably send the check.
They do, especially the solicitations that go out. That's in the form of an invoice. But the other group that sends a letter out, they refer you to their website. First of all, on their website, you would think you couldn't get up in the morning without a certified copy of your deed. And, if you don't have a certified copy, it's good to have a certified copy of your deed. But if you don't, believe me, when you go to sell your house, the lawyer is going to look up the information and get things going. But even on their website, they would make representations and kind of outrageous statements, how you need this for your kids to go into school. And they almost scared people into thinking, oh, I better pay this.
No, that's it. You plant the seed in the head about, oh, I didn't do something right, and don't want the government coming looking at me.
And it's as I said, it may be legal. I hope at some points, maybe there's a lawsuit just to challenge them. But all we can do is what we do now, and I applaud you for bringing it up because, WBZ TV came by and did a little story on this. There was an article in the Boston Globe on this very fact, and there was even WBZ Radio actually did a story, and yet it's still happening. Yeah. So it's always good just to broadcast it, sure. that if any of these solicitations come, just rip them up or come directly to the Registry of Deeds and we'll take care of you. And another solicitation, believe it or not, and this is more targeting the elderly, is there's a group that they send a letter out for $15. They'll give you a blank homestead form. And we might be talking about the homestead later, but they don't even fill out the homestead form. And so if people need a form, you can download the form free, or we have them at our customer service center. You can come by. Or you can call up our customer service at 781-461-6101. So, as a matter of fact, one of the reasons we have a customer service department, when I was, you're talking about work. My dad used to climb poles for the Boston Edison. He's retired now, 38 years. And you're talking about these modernization initiatives. And he said, remember, some of us don't know anything about computers and don't care to know anything.
Don't want to know.
Don't want to know.
Exactly,
that's my dad.
Yes.
Well, we have a customer service center that you can either call, but we have staff, and the staff and the equipment, they're there to help people that come in. So if someone needs to look up something or needs a copy of their deed or just wants to look and see if a mortgage has been paid off and discharged, they can do it by coming to the customer service center. So
there's always a person to talk to.
Yes, at that number, 781-461-6101, or just come by.
Yeah, and I remember when I used to go up. Yeah, I got to admit, I haven't been there in quite a few years now because I don't have to. I can do it online. But I used to go there, and they were always very helpful.
Well, good.
The other thing I find interesting, Bill, is I did a lot of reading on that package. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've read it, Bruce, but it's very interesting. The one thing I never and still don't quite understand is recorded and registered. Is there a difference between something being recorded, something being registered?
A lot of it, I think, is just an accident of history. Norfolk County started in 1793. So if you have a document, currently there are two sides that document could be recorded on. The recorded land side, which dated back to 1793, and then the land court side, or registered land side. In Massachusetts, there was legislation in 1900 that authorized the land court in Norfolk County, and our first document was February of 1900, where someone went to the land court in Boston and got a certificate of title. And a lot of times it was probably because there was some type of title issue they wanted to resolve. It's an expensive process to go and get your property registered. Most consumers don't even know the difference. The deed looks the same. There are certain protections. Theoretically, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts backs up the registered land if there's a title problem. There are certain benefits under the statute. If someone put a fence up on my recorded land property and they did it for 20 years, they could take my property by adverse possession. But if it's registered land, they are forbidden from doing that. Or if you had a property that was near a lake and someone was walking over it, if it's registered land, they cannot get a prescriptive easement to do that by doing it so many years. So we have a very active registry, a very active land court. About 20% of Norfolk County's land is land court or registered land. But the consumer a lot of times doesn't even know. The attorneys know when they're looking up information, but that's sort of the history between the recorded side and the land court side.
You mentioned a little earlier about the Homestead Act. Again, that's something I'm not quite familiar with myself,
Well, the Homestead Act, the legislature, it's really a creature of the state legislation. The legislature in Chapter 188 said anyone that owns property can declare an estate a homestead. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's only for people's principal residence. So if you have a bunch of rental property, you couldn't put a homestead on that property. I mean, if you had a two-family and you were living on the first floor, of course you could. And it's a relatively simple document. We have information on our website, www.norfolkdeeds.org, if you want to get some information on the homestead. But when I first became registered, the protection was $300,000, and it's been increased to $500,000. And recently there were some more changes. So what you would do is declare an estate a homestead, and it protects your property from a forced sale. Now, if you don't pay the town of Avon your taxes, they can still take the property by tax title, even if you have a homestead on. Or if you don't pay your mortgage, the bank can foreclose on you. But there's other situations. People sometimes get themselves in credit card debt. Or the best example I can give, you might think you have a lot of car insurance on your car insurance, and you hit someone. You might have, say, a $50,000 car insurance policy. You think that's a lot of money. You hit someone and you have a $500,000 case against you. That attorney that's representing that injured party is going to look to your assets, and the biggest assets most of us have are our homes. What the homestead does, for that reason alone, it's probably worth having a homestead, is to kind of put the house off limits. They can't force the sale of a house to satisfy your debts. And I think it's a good consumer protection. Again, it's great you're bringing it up because, some people, I think more people are aware of it now. But, it's something you have to take an affirmative action, an affirmative duty to record and sign. The legislature sets the recording fees at the registry, and that's one of the lower recording fees, $36 to get a homestead done. There have been some changes that went into effect March 16, 2011. If you want to put a homestead on, both people, if you own the property with your spouse, you and your spouse have to sign it in front of a notary. You should thank your local state legislators because for the first time, if you've done nothing, for the first time in Massachusetts history, there's an automatic homestead of $125,000. So and it gets a portion depending on who owns the property. But to my way of thinking, and I first of all, I think if you talk to 10 different attorneys, a lot of times you get 10 different opinions on things. But I think 9.9 out of 10 would say, you know what, if you own real estate and it's your principal residence, you should get a homestead. And, I just think it's a good protection to have. And, it's well worth doing. And there's been some other changes that the state legislature, has put into place. For instance, if you put the property in trust, now a homestead, can be recorded. Other benefits they have in a homestead, the proceeds of the sale are protected, again, for a limited time. So if you owned a house and you sold it, creditors could come in and swoop in and get that money, but for a limited period of time, if you had a homestead, the proceeds of sale are off limits. Or if your house, say, burnt down and you got a big check from the insurance company to rebuild, if you have a homestead recorded, those proceeds are protected, again, for a limited period of time, 2 years in that case, from creditors to coming in.
So you can rebuild your house instead of pay the debt.
Well, instead of people attaching it. Yeah. Of course, the creditors are still going to chase you, but I think the intent of the legislature, and again, our legislators are to be commended, is to protect your home. It's the biggest asset we have, and to protect it. And I believe you should take the affirmative step of recording these homesteads. And the good news is, in the past, when the legislature has increased it, and maybe they'll increase the protection again, you don't have to keep refiling. filing.
Once it's there, it's there.
Once it's there, it's there. And the legislature should be thanked again on the homestead recently. Believe it or not, when you refinance, sometimes the language in the mortgage terminated your homestead, and they put some language in that said, "Hey, if that language is in the real estate mortgage documents effective March 16th, 2011, you can't. That's no good. The homesteads aren't and shouldn't and won't be terminated in Massachusetts."
I had that happen one time when the mortgage was sold. This was back way before this century, back in the 90s. And we went to do all the paperwork with the new mortgage company, and they're like, "You got to get rid of this homestead." I'm like, "Why?" And they made us sign off and get rid of it.
And as a Register of Deeds, we belong to an association, so we've gone up to the State House to lobby for some of these changes. And I have 3 children, one out of college, one in college, and one graduating this year. So people refinance, and it's funny. I loved the bank I was dealing with, and I even said, "Look, if I don't pay, my homestead will not stop you from foreclosing." Right. But they have attorneys. They don't want to take the language out. But I think by bringing this up to the legislature, they finally did this, that said, "Hey, listen, that language, even if it's in there, it doesn't terminate the homestead." And in the case, much like you, what I did, for $36, I put another homestead on because I didn't want to have someone 20 years from now say, "Oh, that homestead was terminated because you refinanced." So, I just put another one on after the transaction. But it's something that people should be aware of, because a lot of times, how many people read, the 30-page mortgage document?
All that small print.
Right now, if
initial it, do you read it?
No. And if they're watching now, go online if you're computer savvy, and you can look up your mortgage and read it from home and read through it and see if that language is in there.
And that will tell you if there's a homestead on the...
Well, it won't tell you there's a homestead. The mortgage language will tell you if that language was in there, like for an old refinance that it was terminated.
Says, it's got to be null and void.
And we do this, and again, have the citizens of Avon check the paper or our website, because we come through and have office hours down at the town hall, but people can't check online. If they put their name in, they can look up to see if they've recorded a homestead, because people might say, "Oh, I thought I did." And that's the great thing about this computerization and modernization effort that we've done, is that we can go into the communities, whether it's at the senior centers, or we've talked to community groups, or go to the office hours at the town halls and look this information up and get it out to people to check on.
A lot of times they don't think about it.
Sure.
You buy a house, you sign a mortgage with the bank, and you figure out 30 years from now I'll have to worry about when it's paid off or something. But they don't think about what's going on.
No, and that's another good thing, Bruce, to bring up about paying things off. And when you borrow money, the bank records a mortgage to make sure you pay them off, and if not, they're going to foreclose on you. But the consumers, we should all check, because when that mortgage gets paid off, whether you are refinancing or whatnot, a lot of times the consumer doesn't think to make sure that there's a document called a discharge, a mortgage discharge, that gets recorded that tells the world that that loan has been paid off. And we see it at the registry. I see it at office hours where people come in and they say, I'm selling my house and I paid that thing off 20 years ago, and they say I have to get a mortgage discharge. And sometimes, for the lucky ones, they have their paperwork, and I go through, and they have an original discharge that was sent to them, but it just wasn't made clear
They didn't know what it was.
that it should get recorded. And other times, let's face it, some of the bigger banks have done a disservice to the integrity of the recording system, and it wasn't too long ago that there's been trouble. I think some of the bigger banks caused trouble. A lot of times they never sent the discharges to people or sent it in to get recorded. And so you can go online and check, and we have a document online that says, where has my bank gone, just for this reason. I'm a big believer in community banks. I see the Avon Cooperative Bank when I was coming in. I'm sure if you're in a situation where you paid something off 10 or 20 years ago, you'd go in, they'd give you great customer service. Yep, you're right, you paid it off. I need a discharge. They'll get it. There's great community banks all across this county that will give you great service. But some of these bigger banks, it's hard to get someone to answer the question, or they've merged, or people forget in the 1990s some went out of business.
Sell your mortgages to another bank.
So what happened is we put a document together. It's online that gives some state and federal websites and telephone numbers where you can kind of track down where your bank has gone. If you ever find yourself in that situation of needing to get that discharge. Because you just want to make sure it's taken care of.
Yeah, I had to do that because my mortgage had been sold so many times when we paid it off. I think it was in the bank that owned it was in Georgia. It wasn't even in Atlanta. It was some small town in Georgia. And we had to go after it. It took about 3 months for the bank to finally send the discharge to the register.
Well,
but they did send it, but I don't, I knew enough to nag them.
Yeah, but
a lot of people don't.
It's funny, as Register of Deeds, you have an operation run, and that's been challenged. I try to, I was in public service, as I mentioned, assistant district attorney for Bill Delahunt, and when I was fortunate to go to school in Washington, D.C. for college, I worked for Joe Moakley for 3 years. So you learn the good about public service. And then I've worked in the private sector, as an attorney, and I had secretaries and bills to pay and vendors to pay, and you learn what government does right in the public service, and you learn to kind of take a little business and entrepreneurial approach. And I've tried to combine that at the registry. So it's great to use that on the operation side, but you get involved in some of these consumer issues. For instance, we're currently pushing a bill. Believe it or not, there's no requirement that assignments have to be recorded. And as the register, I believe they should. I think assignments should be recorded so that the consumers know who has their mortgage. And some of the troubles that have been happening is because assignments haven't been recorded. And so we're still, trying to be proactive as registers to try to help the consumer in that regard.
Now, going forward in the future, what are your plans for the future? What's up next at the registry?
Still,
just more
recordings. Right now, as I said, it's funny. I never saw myself being Register of Deeds. Things in life just happen, but it does combine kind of law, which I've enjoyed in my training. I went to Boston College Law School, and you try to use the legal experience. And the view of the Register of Deeds, like I said, it's an arm of government. It combines like your passion for public service and politics. So right now, just trying to do the best I can at the registry, and it's been a challenge kind of modernizing it, but that's what's made it exciting, and so
I think
keep
you've got
doing
a lot
it.
of good information tonight, Bill.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well, thanks for having me. Always good to be in Avon, and I hopefully
and
provide some
we'll
good
have you back
information.
again.
Oh, around the Cracker Barrel. I enjoy it.
Yeah, Quackers is still here and everything. So, but I wanted to thank you for coming on.
Bruce, thanks for having me.
Hopefully, if anybody has any questions, they can either go to the Register of Deeds in Dedham or call. What's the number again?
The customer service number is 781-461-6101, or you can email me directly at registerodonnell@norfolkdeeds.org.
Or if you have a computer, you can go on the web
at www.norfolkdeeds.org. It's a great resource tool. We provide information for first-time home buyers, people struggling with foreclosure, or if you just want to look up some information, go online and do so.
Yeah. So take a look, try it out, and you might learn something new. Thanks for joining us tonight on Around the Cracker Barrel. Good night.